The first car to roll out with the Porsche badge was the 356 in 1948. Built at the company's factory in Kärnten, Austria, after moving from Stuttgart during the war, the 356 fulfilled Professor Ferdinand Porsche's brief to build a sports car I like myself. And he clearly wasn't the only one, because we're here today with thousands of other enthusiasts to celebrate a marque that's become known the world over for producing some of the world's safest, fastest and most exciting sports cars. But it wasn't always this way. Porsche's origins were actually very humble. They started out by making modifications to the VW Beetle, developed by Ferdinand Porsche's father. In 1950, production returned to the Stuttgart Zuffenhausen plant, and Porsche were amongst the first to carry out comprehensive safety tests, although they were nothing like today's standards, using an almost empty autobahn to test the cars at high speed. But Porsche soon realised that the open public roads weren't a great place for high-speed tests, so in 1961 building started on their development division. Now, it's admirable to think that a company like Porsche that makes some of the world's most exotic sports cars still take their driver safety and environmental concerns seriously too. In 1964, Porsche's most famous car and the world's longest running sports car was launched. The 911 was first available with a 6-cylinder boxer engine, giving 130 brake horsepower, and is of course air-cooled, the way it would remain until 1997. In 1974, Porsche had introduced the 930 Turbo, and it was that car that would form the basis for the 1976 racing programme. This 935 1986 model was derived from the 930, and the prototype had the same traditional Porsche body shell, but a change in racing regulations meant that they could alter the front end, and the now legendary slant nose was born. The 924 was originally designed by Porsche for Volkswagen and was based on readily available parts from the VW parts bin. Thankfully, however, VW backed out at the last minute and Porsche were able to take over. Built at VW's Audi plant in Neckarsulm, the 924 was originally available with a 2-litre, 4-cylinder, single overhead cam engine producing 125 brake horsepower. In typical Porsche fashion though, this was quickly upgraded to give performance more in line with the company's reputation. Improvements were also made to the suspension, brakes and transmission, laying the VW Ghost to rest and making the Porsche as pure as any other. A direct descendant of the 924 and 928, the 944 was powered by literally half an 8-cylinder engine from the 928. Even so, the 4-cylinder, 2.5-litre capacity was large by contemporary standards and meant the 944 had performance in abundance. The 944 was launched in 1981 at the Frankfurt Motor Show, and by 1985 Porsche had introduced the 944 Turbo. Power was up from the 160 brake to 217 brake horsepower, and suspension and braking modifications were also made. In keeping with Porsche's growing reputation for safety, the 944 Turbo was the first sports car to be available with driver and passenger airbags. In 1987, Porsche upgraded the standard 944 to 190 horsepower and called it the S. However, the 944 of choice wasn't to come until 1990. The S2 was an extensive revision of the 944, with bodywork from the 944 Turbo. The interior was revised with more equipment and better quality materials, and on the whole looked more finished than the original car. The choice of engines was changed too, the 3 previous choices being replaced with the 3-litre 16-valve and the 2.5-litre Turbo. Now, ability and performance aren't always reflected, of course, in the price. Sure, your Boxsters, your 911s, they're desirable, but they're expensive. There are a whole range of other Porsches out there, like this 944, that offer bags, nay sackfuls of performance for a lot fewer bucks. So, it might be boxy, it might be 80s, it might be red, but it's got the right badge.